This is Colin O'Keefe here for LXBN TV. As the modern media landscape shifts and traditional ad revenue continues to decrease, publications have started utilizing what's called native advertising, so much so that the FTC recently held a workshop examining the practice. Joining me now from Washington, D.C. to explain exactly what native advertising is and share his thoughts on the FTC's workshop, we bring in attorney Randy Shaheen. He's a partner at Venable and author on the firm's blog all about advertising law. Randy, first, for those who aren't so familiar, what exactly is native advertising, and can you explain its recent rise to popularity?
Sure, and thanks, Colin. So it's got a fancy new name, but native advertising actually has been around for a while. It's basically an attempt by advertisers to blend in the advertising with the editorial content. So everyone's probably seen infomercials on TV, which look kind of like TV programs and not so much commercials. That's a form of native advertising that's been around for quite a while. What's happening now with the internet is instead of pop-ups and banner ads, which consumers find annoying, companies are going to native advertising, advertising that looks more like editorial content on websites.
I see. And then second, you had a pretty lengthy breakdown of exactly what happened with the FTC's workshop. But can you offer us some key takeaways and what stood out to you as sources of potential regulation?
I think a couple of things. First, I mean, it was pretty clear from all the participants that there's a lot of disagreement about how much disclosure needs to be done here. There were some people who advocated that whenever a company is involved in paying for editorial content or controlling editorial content, that there ought to be a disclosure there, even if it's not directly selling a product. There were other people that said, if a company sponsors content that appears on the New York Times website, they only need to disclose that if they're more directly marketing or pitching or promoting their products. And so there's a lot of disagreement there. Some people, I think, felt that was important from a journalistic ethics standpoint, but less so from a legal standpoint. So I think that's one key thing for the FTC to decide is where do you draw the line? When do you have to make disclosure? And then secondly, if you do have to make disclosure, where do you do it? How do you do it? Some people talked about the word sponsored. We've seen ads which say Google listings which say a sponsored listing. Some people said, well, what does that mean? You turn on Sesame Street and it might say it's sponsored by, Exxon. Well, Exxon didn't tell Sesame Street what to say. They just wrote a check. But online with native advertising, oftentimes the quote unquote sponsor is also telling the content provider what to say. So there's questions that remain too about how you disclose and where you disclose.
Absolutely. It's going to be fascinating to watch the continued evolution of this practice as you do have potential pitfalls with journalistic ethic concerns and also even possible consumer deception. But as you mentioned, this is a practice that's been out there already for some time. Once again, that was Randy Shaheen of Venable. For more of his insight, he has an in-depth breakdown of this workshop. Be sure to read it. It's at allaboutadvertisinglaw.com. And if you're not watching us here on LXBN, visit LXBN.com where you can find hundreds more of these LXBN TV video interviews along with curated commentary from the LexBlog Network's more than 8,000 members. Thank you for joining me today, Randy.
Sure. Thanks, Colin.